that better?
Yeah, that's perfect. It'll stick on your screen then.
Perfect. So you can tell I'm a bit new to all this Zoom stuff. So upward touch, dropping one at a time. And then we're going to add in some arm movements. So coming up, as we drop one heel, the opposite hand goes in the air. So trying to push the shoulder blade down and get those arms moving as much as we can. Keep going with that. I can still hear one person, so I haven't done this right.
Oh, sorry, I've just joined you.
Okay. There we go. Perfect. So relax both heels down and the arms by the side. Staying in this position, we're coming down into a small squat. We're lifting the heels off the floor, straightening the legs, and then popping the heels back down. So start off nice and slow. Bending into a squat, lifting the heels up, straightening with the legs, and back down. And then as you get going, try and make the movement a little bit more flowing once you get your balance. So we're using those core muscles to keep us balanced, always tucking that tummy in. And two more. Just warming up our legs. Now I'm going to really confuse everyone because we're going to go in reverse. So we're going to arms out to balance, tightening through the core, coming up onto your toes, dropping into a squat, heels back down and standing back up. And again, if you want to make this one a little bit harder, you can hold sort of water bottles or cans in your hands. So just trying to keep your chest forward throughout. And the last one. Good. If you've got your rolled up towel, I'm going to use a ball, but what we're going to do is come on the side, use the wall or anything to balance if you need to. Coming into this position, squeezing your hamstrings to hold the towel there. And you're going to bring your knee up towards your chest. And then as you're coming back through, touching the floor. So try one on each leg if you need a bit of time to balance. If you wobble, towel falls, just start again. When that leg gets tired, just swap over and try and do a few on each leg at a time. So the hard bit is with this one is keeping the ball there. As we get a little bit more confident, you tend to relax, and that's where you drop it. And swap inside for the last time. So really using those glute muscles and our hamstrings to pull us back up to standing. Okay, ditch the towel to one side and you're going to widen your stance by 2 turns. So we're in sort of the sumo squat position. Start off by coming down and then squeezing the quads to come back up. Remembering to squeeze those glute muscles as well, and then you go as far as you feel comfortable. We're going to progress this slightly by coming down, coming up onto one leg, 2 movements out to the side before we come back down and up. So with this one, we're trying to isolate our hip movement. So making sure we're not leaning to the side, we're just moving from the hip. And last 2. Good. We're just warming up our arms quickly. So start like you're holding a tray of drinks. Roll the shoulders back so you're in a good posture. And we're starting by just coming out to the side, as far as you feel comfortable. And we're going to progress this to coming out, straightening the arms, twisting like you're emptying a can of drink, and then coming back. So try not to shrug the shoulders in this position. We're still trying to keep our posture nice and upright, especially if we've been sat at a desk all day today. Might be slouching over a little bit. And last 2. Good. And if you have a band, we're going to use it next. But if not, you may have sort of 2 cans or 2 drink bottles. So if you have got a band, we're going to stand on it with both feet. We are going to come down into a squat, stand back up, bend over, row, and back up. So squat, up, sort of a deadlift position, row, and using those glutes to come back up. So when we're rowing, keeping that posture nice and upright, keeping those shoulders back. And 2 more. Last one. Good. Drop the band to one side and come to the end of your mat or wherever you are. And we're going to go into a full roll down. So this is about mobility. So start by looking up towards the ceiling, then bring your chin towards your chest, roll the shoulders forward, moving down sort of 1 vertebrae at a time. So we're not moving as a column from the hips, we're really rolling the spine forward as far as you feel comfortable. Then we are bending the legs, walking forward. So we're going to go into 2 push-ups. You can stay in this position and come down, or you can go into full and into that. So once you've done 2, we're coming back onto our toes, walking back in and rolling up that spine and a shoulder roll at the top. And we're going to go for 2 more. Stretching up as tall as you can at the top. And last one, we're just going to stay onto our mat after the press ups. Good. Once you've done those, coming onto all fours, so our hips below our knee and our hands are slightly in front of our shoulders. We're arching the back all the way up, tucking the hips underneath, and then bringing the belly button to the floor and looking forward. So just working a little bit more on getting our spine moving before we start. Try and make this movement a little bit larger each time. And last one. Good. Coming onto your backs, we're going to start by just warming up the core muscles. So we've got our legs at hip width apart and our knees bent. We're just going to focus on making sure those two bony points on our pelvis are facing the ceiling. So you can tell if they're tilted forward like so, you've got a bigger gap underneath your back. So you want that pelvis to be nice and neutral. You're drawing in the core muscles up towards the ribs, and you're bringing one leg off the floor at a time. So this may seem like a really simple exercise, but to keep our pelvis in this position, our core has to be nice and active. So keeping the majority of our back nice and flat on the mat. And then for anyone that wants to make this harder, we're bringing one leg up and then the other, hands by the side, and we're dropping one leg at a time. So you may want to start off by coming down, back up and down. And then as you feel more confident, you can swap midway. Try and keep the breathing nice and normal. You don't want to be holding your breath. Should feel those core muscles start to work. Okay, and if we've got any runners, it's really good for this one, for the biomechanics, to do running arms at the same time. So as one leg's up, opposite hands up, and you're swapping. So we're almost thinking about how we move when we run. This really gets your coordination going as well. Three, two, and one. Rest both legs down and just have a few deep breaths in while I show you what we're doing next. So getting into our one leg stretch. So in this position, nice and neutral, pelvis tight through the core, we can just straighten one leg. Now this might feel like enough for some people, but others might want to make it a bit harder by coming up into our tabletop and then straightening one leg. So pick whichever one suits you and try and just keep your pelvis and your back should be in the same position throughout the movement. As you come forward with the leg, you don't want that pelvis tilting forward. We want to stay nice and strong. If you feel that core getting tired and you need a rest, just rest one leg down at a time, have a stretch and come back up. quite nice to get into a breathing pattern. So if you can breathe in when you're in this position and out as you straighten one leg. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good. If your legs are in this position, rest them down for a second. And we're going to combine the two exercises we've just done. So if you're doing the easier levels, we're coming up, tap, and straighten. And then repeating on the other side. If we're doing the harder levels, we're coming up into tabletop, coming down, straightening, and swapping sides. So whichever one you've done in the previous two, try and stick with the same level. Again, this one tests the brain more than anything, I think. Okay, one more on each side. Good. Rest one leg down, then the other, and just stretch your hands above your head and your legs out straight, as tall as you can. Just stretching for our abs for a few seconds. Try and slow down the breathing. Before we come back into this position. Now, if you've got sort of cans or drink bottles or a resistance band, we're going to need those again. So for this one, we're trying to come into our double leg tabletop here. Popping the band across our legs. If you've got water bottles, just holding them in your hands. Now we're going to do sets of 5. So we're pulling down for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, before we come up into a crunch and repeat 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Coming down and repeating. So we're going to try and do 5 sets before we have a rest. So whenever we're ready, breathing in for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Out, 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathe in, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Out, 4, 3, 2, 1. In, 4, 3, 2, 1. Out, 4, 3, 2, 1. In, 4, 3, 2, 1. Out, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the last set, breathing in, 4, 3, 2, 1. Out, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Remove the band and drop the legs down. If you need another stretch, then just go into our pencil stretch. For the next one we're going to do, you've probably done before in circuit, so we're going into a shoulder bridge. So we're starting by rolling our pelvis off of the mat, squeezing the glute muscles up into a bridge. So we're gradually peeling off the mat instead of coming up in one movement. And then we're coming down from the upper back first, then the lower back, then lastly the pelvis. And repeating. So I want to get those glutes nice and strong. People always laugh at this one, but pretend you got a piece of paper between your bum cheeks and you're squeezing it so it doesn't fly away. And we're going to do 3 more in this position. Good, and once you've done those three, we can progress this slightly. So we've got two options here. We can come up, and it may just be that you want to straighten one leg, and that's enough movement before you come down. If you want to try something slightly different, in this position, you're coming up, drawing a line with your tail twice before you come back down. So pick again whichever level suits you the best. So I'll go through them again. Level 1, we're just straightening one leg, and you may want to do this twice. And then the other, slightly harder, is coming up straight, down, up, before you return to the mat. Just have a go, and if any of those are too hard, then you can just return to our normal glute bridge. Again, try 2 more before we give our glutes a bit of a rest. Good. And come back onto the mat. Bringing one ankle across the knee, so stretching through our glutes. If this feels too easy, then you can draw in the leg towards you to stretch further. Dropping that leg back down and swapping sides. And drawing that leg in if you can. Good, relax that leg down, and we're coming onto our side. So hopefully you can see me, the sun shining through my window a lot, so I keep going like a bit of a blur. But we're onto our side in sort of a side plank position. So our knees, hips, and shoulders are all in line. And our elbow is underneath our shoulder. We're gonna push our hips off of the mat, straighten one leg, and we're gonna do 3 leg lifts before we touch the hip back on the mat and come back up. So if you need a bigger rest, then completely relax at the bottom. But if you can stay nice and active and just touch off of the mat, just is a bit harder on our core muscles. Good, and keep this going. If you need a rest, just have a rest. It's normally the shoulder that fatigues first with this one. Last one. Good. Relax the hip down, and we're lying onto our side. If you've got your towel, you can use it as a pillow. Our feet are together, and they're in line with our bum. So if you lift them off the mat, you can see that you're in line. And we're going to start by pushing the top hip away from you. So push it towards our toes. So you get a small gap underneath the waist. From here, lifting up into a clam. So really focusing on the little muscles in our hips and our glutes. If you want to progress this, you can lift the heels off of the mat, keeping them glued together, opening up in this position. You may find those muscles around sort of the back of your hip starting to fatigue. Means they're working hard. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Drop the feet back down, stretch the legs out and bring that top knee in towards your chest. So we're just stretching through the muscles we've just worked. Try and slow down your breathing as well. Back to sort of normal breathing rate. Good. We're coming back onto our forearm for a side bend. So we're back into this position where we're in sort of a diagonal line. Our hand is going on our top leg and we're making sure the chest and the hips are facing forward. We're coming up and over. So we're pushing our hips as far as they can to the ceiling before we come back down. So just a little bit more work on the outer abs, coming up and over. Try and take a deep breath in before you move. So deep breath in this position, breathing out as we come up. And the last one. Good. And we're coming onto the other side to repeat the exercises we've just done on the opposite hip. So we're starting in our side plank. Nice and in line, coming up. So we're just at a diagonal and then lifting the foot 3 times before we're coming back down. Again, rest if you need to, but if you can, hop straight back up. This is where I start kicking the sofa. Touching down and back up. So this one's quite a difficult exercise after a few reps. And last 2. Good, rest down. And we're going into our clown position again. So bending the knees up, feet in line with the bum, pushing the top hip away from you, and start by opening up the knees. So with this one, if you feel like you're not getting enough sort of achiness around the hip, like those muscles are working, it may be because you're rotating backwards. So try to put your hand behind your back to make sure you're not twisting around as you move your leg up. These are ones that you kind of start hating after a few Pilates classes, the burn of your glute muscles. And if you can lift those legs off of the mat and come into our level two. So really important muscles, these ones, for strengthening, especially if you do anything like running, and keep your knees in a good position when you run. Three, two, and one. Relax the legs down, and we're going to come onto our front. So I don't know if we've got any swimmers, but this is a great one, especially to do now we're in lockdown. So we're going to emphasize that swimming movement to work our back muscles. So if you've got your towel that you can use as a pillow, that would be great. We'll bring the hands out to the side. We're drawing the belly button in off of the mat. So we're on that nice strong core. We're lifting our chest slightly off the mat as we straighten out, coming up further to come round, and then coming back and down. So if you do want to sort of monitor your breathing throughout that one, we exhale to come up, we inhale to come out, exhale to come up further, inhale and down. Rest as much as you need to in between reps, and if you need to sort of redraw in that core, then do that before you start again. So exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale and down. And if you are an experienced swimmer, then just don't rest in between. So you're staying in this hovered position and you're going again. If anyone is struggling with getting their arms all the way around in this position, you can just do forward and back and stay hovered off the mat. And two more. Good. And rest the hands down. If anyone's got back pain, then don't try the next one. So we're going to push up into Cobra. If you have a sore back, you can come back into child's pose instead, so we don't sort of emphasize any discomfort. But if you can come into Cobra by dropping the hips, then that's great. Try and slow down that breathing again. Then coming on to all fours. So we're going to go into a little bit more of a weight bearing exercise this time. So hips over knees, hands slightly in front of shoulders, tucking the toes underneath. You're drawing in that core, so you've got a nice flat back before you hover the knees off of the mat. And you're going to hold this like bear crawl position. So pretending that your dinner's on your back. So you have to keep it nice and flat. And we're going to hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and down. Okay, come back into child's pose to have a quick stretch off, so reaching the hands as far as you can forward. Before we go into our next set. Back into our all fours position and drawing in the core and coming up. Try and keep the breathing nice and normal. Don't hold your breath. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and down. Good. So we're going to emphasize a little bit more work on our legs in this position. So instead of having the hands near the shoulders, we're going to bring them one step forward. We're coming up before we straighten the legs using those big thigh muscles to get us into this position, and then back and down. So again, we're using that core is really important to keep us nice and strong. So core activated, before you come up, forward, back, and down. Rest as much as you need to between each rep. I'm going to go for 2 more reps. Last one. Good. So have a sit up and stretch for our arms before we go on to the next exercise. So bring one arm across the chest. And then bring it up onto the opposite shoulder, drawing the elbow in. Swapping onto the other side. Going up towards the opposite shoulder and drawing in. Hopefully you're all finding it okay so far. You may be familiar with the next exercise. They're called sort of Supermans. So on all fours again, making sure we've got that flat back before we drag one hand and one heel across the mat, and we're lifting up. Back down and in. So the hard bit is finding enough room so you don't kick anything in your house. Going out, up, down, and in. So what's really important to focus on is when we come up into this position, we still want that flat back. We don't want to be sort of bending. We want to keep nice and stable. And as you get more confident, you can make the movement a little bit more flowing. Good, and last two. If you were to do this session again, you can add in a resistance band. So maybe if we do another session at any point, you may want to add a band to make either the lower body or the upper body exercise a little bit harder. We're sitting on our bum for the next one, and our feet are still hip width apart, but we're sat right on our sitting bones. So 2 bony points of your pelvis. Sitting up as tall as you can, pretending you've got sort of a broomstick tied to your back so you can't bend forward or back. We're nice and straight. The arms are coming out in front. You're again squeezing in that core as we roll ourselves back off of those sitting bones to around here to start, and then we roll back up. So we're just using our core muscles to hold us in this position and come back up to seated. So start off really nice and small. And then as you're feeling more confident, if you've done sort of a lot of core strengthening before, you can come back further. So you'll get an idea of whether you're going too far if your feet start to leave the mat. It's just a way of sort of balancing out so you don't fall over. This is a really good one to get our lower backs moving as well if you're feeling stiff. And last two. Good. We're going to test ourselves a little bit and try and go all the way to the floor. If you have a band, this can take off quite a lot of the pressure. So if you do have a band, you can pop it around your feet, so you're stood on it, and use this basically as a support system so you can kind of pull on it as you're coming back to control. So if you have got one, part in each hand, you're doing the same movement, so you're rolling back, but this time until you're led on your back. Your heels are stopping that band from sliding. You're squeezing the core to bring the chest up, using that band to sort of pull you back up to seated. So if you haven't, then we can use our hands on our thighs. So we're coming down, controlling all the way to the floor, running your hands up your thighs. And if you get to this point and you get a bit stuck, just sort of walk the hands up the legs instead. You may be able to do it all the way out. So if you are really strong, you can come all the way down and then come all the way back up. These take quite a lot of practice, so start with whichever level suits you best and keep them going. It always helps as well to try and take a deep breath in as you're at the bottom, and as you breathe out, moving away back up. This helps our muscles activate. Last one. Good. The next exercise is quite similar, but it's called teaser. So it's a way of building up into a V-sit. And so we're going to start in this position. I'm going to straighten one leg. From here, again, if you feel like your leg's quite heavy and you can't hold it there, you can use the band to hold the leg in that position. So hands in the air, straighten one leg. We're coming back as far as you feel comfortable to start and coming back up. But if you can, go into the same as what we just did. So we're coming all the way to the floor and coming back up, trying to keep the foot in the same place the whole time. So I'll demonstrate with the band. You're coming up, coming down, foot's in the same position, and we're using our core to squeeze us back up. Just gives us a little bit of support. And you're going to try and aim to do 3 before you swap sides. Give that leg a little bit of a rest while you do the other. The band's quite useful because you can almost pull on it if you get stuck at any point. Good, and I'm going to do 2 more on each leg, with or without the band. As you get tired, you tend to use those arms a bit more to help you get up. Good, relax down. And we're just going to hug one knee in towards us, pulling it across to the opposite side of the body. Good, and swap inside. So hugging the knee in and pulling it across to the opposite shoulder. Good, we're going to finish with a nice move that's not too hard on the core. It's just really good for our mid-back mobility. So in our press-up position, we're rolling onto the outsides of our feet as we bring one arm up. We come down and we swap to the other side. Again, if that one's too much, you can come into a kneeling position, roll on to the side, knees stuck together, coming up before you swap sides. Just balance with this one. There's normally at least one class a week where I absolutely go flying. One more on each side. Good. Dropping the knees to the mat, coming into our child's pose, but this time bringing the hands to the left side of the mat. Really reaching those hands as far as you can forward. And we're going to finish with 10 minutes stretching out our whole body. The bit that forgets how much work you've just done on your core. Walking the hands to the right side. Coming back to the middle and coming up onto all fours. Bringing one hand through underneath the other before you come up towards the ceiling. So under and rotating up. We're going to do 4 on each side. It's a really good one to do sort of in between work breaks if you are working from home. To get up out the chair if you've been on the computer and have a stretch. Good. From here, we're sitting ourselves up onto our knees, bringing one foot forward. Before you go into a lunge, I want you to try and twist the pelvis so you're tucking the tailbone underneath. You should already feel a stretch on that back thigh before you lean forward. Hardest thing about stretching is trying to relax. Does actually hurt a lot less if you try and relax. Should gradually now just slowing down our breathing, getting that heart rate down. Bringing the hands up, and we're leaning to the opposite side of the back leg. So if you've got the right leg back, we're leaning to the left. Coming back up and bringing our hands onto the mat, tucking the toe under and coming up into a larger lunge stretch. So if you feel comfortable just with the knee on the floor, then you can stay like this. If not, try and hover the knee off the mat. Good. Bringing the leg back and stretching into downward dog. Pushing the shoulders underneath, heels as far down as they can towards the floor. Going back onto our knees. 1 foot forward, twisting that pelvis under and coming into our normal lunge. Bringing the hands up towards the ceiling and twisting to the opposite side of the back leg. Coming back up, hands by the side of the front foot, lifting the knee off of the mat into a larger lunge stretch. This is where you get the shakes in your back leg. Good. Coming up, bringing that leg back into downward dog. Really pushing those heels towards the floor to get a nice stretch for our calves and our hamstrings. Good. Coming forward into Cobra if you can. Just for a second. Before we come onto our side. Straightening the bottom leg, holding the ankle of the top leg into a quad stretch. If you're not feeling too much of a stretch in this position, you can try and bring the knee backwards. Sitting yourself up with one leg bent in front of you and one leg bent behind. If you can't get into this position for any hip reasons, then you can just pop the legs in front. Walking our right hand across the mat and our left hand over the top for a nice side stretch. Swapping sides. So it's definitely one side where you don't expect to get the same amount of movement. This side for me feels like I'm moving nowhere. Swapping the legs over, so opposite one back. Starting again on the right hand side, reaching over. Swapping to the left hand side. Good. Before we come on to our side, to stretch the opposite quad. Again, drawing that heel in as close to your bum as you can. If it's not a big enough stretch for you, then you can push the knee backwards. Good. Let go of that leg, rolling onto our front and just pushing ourselves up, walking the hands in and coming into our hamstring stretch. So if you need to bend the legs, then bend the legs slightly. If you can, straighten the legs, just move the hands wherever you feel comfortable, whether it's further away from your feet or closer. Again, this is a really hard one to relax, but try and keep the breathing regular so you don't tense up. And then we're rolling up the spine like we did at the start, one vertebrae at a time. Shoulder roll at the top and stretch the arms up towards the ceiling before you release. Coming into the center of your mat. And we're just gonna breathe in as we bring the hands up, tall as you can, and breathe out to release. And one more time, tall as you can at the top. And breathe out. Good, well done everyone, that was the class. If anyone's got any questions, just turn on your mics. But well done, I hope you all enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I hope you all enjoyed it. I'm really well.
That's
great, thank you.
Thank you
Yes.
very
Very much.
much.
Lovely.
Perfect.
Very nice
Thank
to
you.
do.
I look a lot sweatier than everyone else.
I think we're outside.
I can't open my window otherwise it knocks my laptop over, so.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
Hopefully nobody saw what my dogs were up to at one point in that. No, they speak Spanish.
Bye.
Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
Thank you.
Stay on for a bit, Hannah.
Yeah, we'll do.
See you soon.
Oh,
Thank you.
I'm definitely a lot sweatier than everyone else after that. It's talking at the same time. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Was it all right?
I really enjoyed it. It was really, really good. I've got my husband to take some photographs of me doing it, and I've tried to take a few screen grabs as well. So
Perfect.
I'll stick them on the WhatsApp page so you can share them if you need to. And yeah, I've got rid of my dogs now.
They were just climbing all over you and adding a bit of extra weight to the scenario.
Yeah, generally they just like to join in.
And just know if you want any more classes, if we've kind of got the idea that gyms might be shut for a while. So if you do want anything else, just give me a shout.
Yeah, no, it's good to do. I think we should keep on doing the guest groups every Wednesday and just maybe alternate between you and Naomi.
Yeah.
Because it's different. It's very different to what I'm doing. There's a few of the exercises that I do, but you do them differently. So it's good to have a variety of people.
The only real difference is it's the same, isn't it, with like Superman's. It's just a little bit more focus on sort of the core, so we're protecting that back.
Yeah.
Because I learned from like a clinical Pilates sort of scenario, it's very much about like when we're going into a glute bridge, getting that spine mobility as well.
Yeah.
Sort of the few different things, but I've found it's really effective. I've got a lot of clients who enjoy it.
And there's quite a few people who, two or three of the ones that came tonight have talked to me about their back hurting because they're sitting at on a shit desk or working on their sofa. They haven't got a proper office chair, and yeah, it's good to do this kind of thing. And maybe it's hopefully recorded, so I can send it on to them all.
Yeah.
Have a look. Actually, I should get a nice little. Let's have a look. I should get an email quite soon telling me that it's recorded. Oh yeah, not yet. But yeah, but actually, tell you what, that's why it's still recording.
Oh, there we go.
We can hopefully. Actually, let me just do this. Let me reclaim host. I love the way reclaim host. Oh my god, it makes it sound.
I'm glad you know what you're doing with this thing.
Well, I do it so often. Right, let's stop that.
How many did we have in the end? 6 at a time on mine. So.
Yeah, 13 people.
Perfect.
So you and me, and then 13 others.